Hey guys, welcome to my very first YouTube video. So this is really awkward for me and I'm sorry if I sound really awkward, but I asked if anyone wanted to see a tutorial on how I edit my photos for Instagram. So that's what I'm going to be doing today, and I figured it would be easier to show you through a video than explaining it all step by step in writing. So I have my phone here. I'm going to do a little screen capture for the whole thing. So I'm going to show you how I edited 4 different styles of photos, and I'll bring them up on the screen so you can see all of them in a second. But one is going to be how I edit my photos for summer, the next one is going to be for fall, and then 2 are going to be how I edit them now, which is for kind of like Christmas into winter, and one of those is a selfie, so that has a few extra steps, and then the second one is just a normal street shot. So I'll start with the apps that I use. So as you can see here on my screen, I have a photo and video folder on my phone. The apps on this first page are the ones that I use most frequently. So my favorite app is Lightroom, and I'll get into that in a second, but that's how I edit the majority of my photos. And then Facetune I just use for kind of fine-tuning things, mostly selfies, you know, everyone knows what Facetune is. Stepseed is mostly for editing lighting and like little spots and stuff that I don't like. I'm going to use that on one of my photos today. And then Unum is how I plan my feed in the end. So I'll show you a bit of that, and then I might do another video later on how I actually plan things out, like put them side by side. QuickShot is one that I just discovered not too long ago. It's kind of cool, it's like special effects almost, but I'll do a little bit of that just for fun. And then everyone knows what VSCO is. I don't really use it that often. I used to use VSCO all the time a couple of years ago, but recently I've been getting into using Lightroom more than VSCO just because, I don't know, I'm just kind of over VSCO right now. So I'll start with Lightroom, and I've actually made a little folder of edits. So these are like photos that I've already edited for different things. The cool thing that you can do in Lightroom, you can just copy and paste effects from one photo to the next one. So the 4 photos that I'm going to be editing today are this one, which is my summer photo. So I don't actually think I posted this on Instagram afterwards, but it's kind of like bright, fun. And then the second one I'm going to be editing is this one, and I actually didn't post this one either. I don't know why, I kind of like the photo, but this is how I do things for fall. Then the 2 like more recent ones that I'm going to edit are this one here, which is like an outtake of a couple that I actually did post on Instagram. And then the 4th one is this selfie. So this before and that's after. So we'll start with the summer one. So I'm just going to go to reset and reset all. So this is the photo how it looked before. So the first thing I do is I just click the auto and see if I like what the auto does. Usually I don't like what the auto filter does. I'm going to take that off, and then I'm going to go to light, and for this one I'm going to brighten it a little bit just to make the whites pop. Then for contrast, I usually up the contrast a little bit, especially for my summer photos, because I like the colors to be really bright and to really pop. For fall, as you'll see later on, I kind of turn down the contrast a little bit just because it makes it more like gloomy looking. Highlights is mostly just like the sky in this one. I expected the white dress to be brightened up a little bit, but it's not. So I'm going to turn it down a bit, just because I don't really love the look of the whole white sky. This was kind of like a rainy day, and I actually got my mom to take this photo for me, and it was really gross out. So sorry Mom, but anyways, I'm going to turn down the highlights a little bit for that. And then for the shadows, you can see if you turn the shadows down, it'll be a lot darker the whole photo. I usually turn up the shadows a little bit just because you can see, especially in my face area, if I turn it down, then my face goes all dark, and I don't want the like shadow on my face. So turn up the shadows a little bit. And then for the whites, I play around with this a little bit. I think I'm going to turn up the whites a little bit just because I turned down the highlights a bit. And if you turn up the whites, it's kind of the same thing as, not the same, but it's very similar to turning up the highlights. And where I turn down the highlights, I'm going to turn up the whites a little bit just to like brighten it up a little bit more, especially the white of my dress. And then the blacks, it's kind of the same thing as shadows in a way, but I'm actually going to turn down the blacks a little bit just to like make more contrast, especially where I turn up the shadows too. So same thing as highlights and white is similar, shadows and blacks are similar. And then you can also click this little curve button and then you can like adjust the colors individually. I didn't actually do this for my summer photos just because I wanted them to be more like realistic, just bright, fun. So I'm gonna get rid of all of that. Yeah. So then I go into color, and this is kind of my favorite spot of this app just because like you can play around with it so much and make it all fun. Woo, let's not do that. So for summer I always turn up the temp at least to like 10. It can be a little bit more too. For this one I'm gonna do like 18 because it's kind of like dark and gloomy out like I said before. So 17, yeah, that's fine. And for all of my photos, generally, as a rule, I don't know why, but I like them to be more on the purple side than on the green side of the tint. Just because, I don't know, maybe it's just because my favorite color is purple. So I'm going to turn up the tint just to like 4. 4 is good. And vibrance, of course, for summer, I always turn up the vibrance. And vibrance more so than saturation, because I find if I turn up the saturation, my skin starts to look really orange, especially when I have self-tanner on, which is the majority of the time, and that doesn't look cute. So I'll leave that down, and I'll turn up the vibrance to, I don't like doing 13 because that's unlucky, to 15. Yeah, that's good for now. Because then we're going to play around with colors. So then I go to mix, and for this you can really do whatever you want, brighten up any of the colors. Since this is a rainbow on the ground, I'm definitely going to turn up the saturation on all of these. So, and this little part is so cute because like, for example, if I want to turn down if my skin looks like way too orange, then I can put it more on like the yellow side a little bit, and then I can turn the saturation down, and then turn the luminance down a little bit if you want to look more tan. So yeah, for that. And I'm just going to go back to red a bit because I forgot to finish that. I'm going to turn the hue down. I find that reds in photos usually pull a little bit on the more orange side, and I don't like that, especially where the red is right next to the orange in this photo. So the red stripe, I'm going to make it a little bit more pinky. And then keep the luminance where it is, because if I turn it up it kind of looks a bit washed out, so I don't want that. And yellow, sometimes my skin tone picks up in the yellow. If that happens, I don't turn up the saturation because my skin just looks too saturated then. But for this one, my skin picked up in the orange, so I'm going to turn up the saturation of the yellow just to make that stripe brighter. I'm actually going to turn it up in the luminance because it kind of brightens up, especially in the background. It picks up some of the greens. And then green in summer, I love to turn up the greens in the bright in the background. Usually in the summer, like green is kind of like what makes all of the photos a bit coherent. And I'm gonna make it a bit more on the blue side just to make it stand out from the yellow right next to it. And then this like aqua blue color usually doesn't pick up in anything. So yeah, that's just a little bit pointless. So that'll just stay there. And for the blue, I'm going to turn up the blue stripe a bit and brighten it up a little tiny bit. Turn it more on the aqua side. And then nothing's picking up in purple. And in the pink, I'm going to turn up that saturation, turn up the brightness a little bit. And there. So you can already see the huge difference in the photo there. And then my favorite part are the profiles. So I have my favorites here, but you can see like these are all of the ones that you can choose from. My favorite two are modern and vintage. So the one that I always choose for my summer photos is modern 08. I don't know, I just love this like washed out look. Even though it's a modern filter, I find that it's more on the vintage side. It just looks like super bright looking and fun. So I'm gonna turn that up. I usually only put my filters to about 50. I find if I put it too up, it's just like, it's too much. But if you keep it at about 50 and you apply it to all of your photos, that's what I find makes them all look the same. So keep it about 50. Yeah, I like that. And you can see the difference. So that's before and that's after. So then I go back and I fine tune it a little bit more. So I'm finding that it looks a little bit washed out still. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the curve. So this curve is where you can kind of fine tune the lighting. So if you bring it down, it looks more on the dark side. If you bring it up, it looks brighter. I don't really know my way around these curve things, but it's fine. That's fine, good enough. And same thing with this part. I'm gonna pull that one down. That's the first like little wheel looking thingy. That looks better to me. And then I am going to bring up the contrast a little bit more. Then I'm gonna bring up the whites. And then what I always do, no matter what, is turn up the sharpening. I have an iPhone 8, so the quality isn't the best. But if I turn up the sharpening, it looks a bit better. I turn it to about 30. And then I go to the effects window and I turn up the clarity a little bit. Not very much because then it looks all like grainy picnic circa 2008 kind of. I turn it up just to about 5. And then you can always turn up the texture as well if you're finding that the photo looks a bit blurry. Upping the texture is always a good idea for that. So up it to about 5. I'm happy with this now. Actually, I'm going to up the tint a little bit more. So yeah, so that's that. And what you can do in Lightroom, which is really cool, is you can create your own presets. So you can see all of mine here. I named them like random things. But if I want to save this and paste it to a bunch of other photos, all I have to do is create preset. So create, and then I can call this summer. And then you just like choose everything there and then save. Awesome. Oh, one more thing that I forgot to do is I always crop my photos in the size for Instagram before exporting them. So for this one, it's always 4:5, and I'm going to just drag it down to the bottom because the sky is kind of boring. I like to keep the bottom in it, so I'm going to save that. Awesome. So then what I can do is I can copy the edits from that, or you can just go to the preset window and then I'm going to paste it to any of my other photos. So these ones here that I just selected were all summer photos, so I'm just going to paste that and hit apply. So that's applied, so you can see like that's super fun. These ones here I would probably up the brightness a little bit and actually turn down the saturation just because they were a little bit warmer to begin with. So moving on to my fall photo, which is this one right here. So it's basically the same for all of my photos no matter what time of year. So I'm just going to run through this in order to save time instead of editing it from the beginning. So I already have this one edited. So I kept the exposure at 0 just because it was taken at like 8 o'clock in the morning. It's pretty bright to begin with. I turned down the contrast for fall just because fall photos, I like it to be more on the gloomy side. Turning down the contrast does that for me, in my opinion. For this one, I just turned down the highlights a little tiny bit. It was already bright to begin with. I turned down the shadows because where I didn't really turn down the highlights very much, I just found it was kind of a little bright, so turned that down. I turned down the whites just because if you turn it up, it's kind of washing out my dress. So turning it down a little bit, and the black, same thing as with the shadows. I just wanted to give it a little bit more texture where I turned down the contrast. And then for color, for fall photos, I always turn down the vibrance. And then I turn up the temperature a little tiny bit and turn up the tint. And then I go to mix again, and for this one I turned up the saturation on the red. I don't know why, it didn't really do a whole lot. Probably just copied and pasted it from another photo. And for saturation, for the orange, turn it up a little bit. It's not really picking up the orange tones in my skin a whole lot, and my skin looks a bit washed out. So turn up the saturation a little bit for that. Yellows, I kept it at 0. If I turn it up, it brightens up the background. I usually like my backgrounds to be pretty neutral, so I kept that there. For the greens, again, I just copied and pasted this from another photo. If you turn up the green, it's picking up a bit of green in the background. I don't like that, so turn that down. Yeah, it's not even picking up the pink in my dress for pink, so that's fine. That's fine there. And for this one, I forgot to mention, I didn't do anything with the curve. So it's all just there like that. And then I'm going to up the clarity a little tiny bit. And this is one of my favorite things actually for fall photos. I up the grain. So I make it pretty grainy looking, not all the way up because then it just looks like really bad quality. But to give it more of a vintage feel, turn it up about 40 and turn up the size. I don't know. I don't think it really does a whole lot, but that's fine. It's there like that. I'm going to turn up the sharpening a little bit. I forgot to do that before, I guess. Like I said, I didn't actually post this photo on Instagram, so it's just been in my drafts. And then the profile that I use for my fall photos is Vintage 08. It just kind of like washes out the photo, looks a little bit more like a Polaroid, which I really like. So I keep that, again, about 50. I'm going to up this one a little bit more to like 67. Yeah, that's fine. There we go. And again, I'm going to crop that 4x5, put it more on the bottom side so I don't cut out my feet, and save that. Awesome. So that's that for that. And then again, I can copy and paste that to other photos. So copy, or you can just save it as its own preset. And paste that to that one was fall, that one was fall, that one was fall. And for that one, I would probably turn up the exposure a little bit, just because I like whites to look very white. And turn down the blue, because the background is picking up a little bit blue, see? So if you turn up the blue, I always turn down the blue if the background is white, because I find white kind of pulls blue a bit. I don't like that. So moving on to my more recent photos, I promise this won't take too long. I'm going to go to this one right here. Again, I'm just going to run through them instead of actually editing it from the beginning. So for this one, I kept the exposure at 0, up the contrast a bit. I always do that for Christmassy photos, make it look a bit more crisp and fun. I downed the highlights because the sky looks pretty blah in the background, and I found my face was a little bit washed out, so highlights are down. Shadows are up just to like bring more clarity and so that you can see the reflection in the glass behind me. I upped the whites a bit where I turned down the highlights. I always do that. And the blacks are just down a little tiny bit. So what I do for the curve in these ones, so that's how I get the like more pinky look in the background. So you can see, like, depending on what I do here, if you pull it down, it looks more on the green side. If you pull it up for red, it looks more on the red side. So I down it a little tiny bit for that, because right here in the middle, I turn it up. So I turn it up just a tad. And I always like my curve to look in this like wavy shape, like you can see here. So I did that for all 3 of them just to make it all even. It just brings more color into the photos, I find. And it looks really cute. Same thing with this like texture-y wave thing. I just have it in that shape there. Don't really know why. I just play around with it just to like see what the tones are like. And then for tint and the colors, I actually turned down the tint in this because I found that in the curve it like pulled a little bit more on the red side. So I turned down the tint to -5. Temperature, I turn it up a little tiny bit. I usually let the curves speak for themselves here for temperature. Didn't do a whole lot there. For vibrance, I turn it up a little tiny bit, and I do the same thing with the mix. So I'll just run through it so that you can see. Oh yeah, for Christmas photos, I always up the saturation for greens. I just love green for Christmas. It looks so fun and festive. And then of course I up the sharpening a little bit, up the clarity and the texture. And the profile that I use for my Christmas photos is Vintage 06. So I don't know, it just makes it like more like green, it makes the whites whiter, which is really cute. And I'll put it at about 55 is fine. So you can see the huge difference there. So that's before and that's after. Super fun. So I'm going to export that. Actually, I'm going to crop it first. I'm going to crop it with more of the sky in it than the ground, because this ground is kind of gross and muddy. And I don't like that sky, so I'm actually going to edit that. So I'm going to show you how I edit the ground using the Snapseed app. So I'm going to go into that. So for this, Snapseed, I find the auto works better than the auto in Lightroom. So I usually just hit the auto. It doesn't really do a whole lot. It just ups the contrast and the warmth. And yeah, it did like nothing, but that's fine. And here I'm going to edit this ground a little bit. So I'm going to go into the selective tool. I'm going to select it, and you can like make it wider or lesser. It just picks up all of that color in the photo. So I'm not going to go over my face because I find it'll pick up the same tones, like the brownie tones of my face, and it'll make my face all weirdly colored. So I'm just going to go to like that much, and I'm going to brighten it, like it stands out a little bit less, in my mind at least. So brightening it, and then I'm going to down the contrast in it so that it's not standing out that much. And I'm going to down the saturation on it, and I'm going to down the structure. Up for brightness and down for the rest. And then I'm going to hit this little plus icon on the bottom, and I'm going to select the color of the ground here. So it's different than the color of the muddy part. So I'm just going to try to make the ground blend in with the like gross part on the side a little bit better. So I'm going to down the brightness a little tiny bit. I'm going to up the contrast. Saturation, I'm going to turn it down a little bit. And the structure, I'm going to keep structure where it is. And then where I edited all of that on the ground, I'm finding that my boots aren't standing out as much. So I'm going to select this black color and just select everything in the photo. I'm going to keep the brightness where it is, basically. I'm going to up the contrast a whole lot. So like 20. I'm going to down the saturation. I don't like when black pulls on the blue side, so downing the saturation gets rid of that. And I'm going to up the structure a whole bunch. So that's a bit better. And then the last thing I'm going to do in this app is I'm going to go to the lens blur. So I'm going to make it in this like line shape. So I just hit that button on the bottom. And then I'm just going to make it so that the line is just going over me. And I'm going to get rid of the vignette. So you can like scroll up and down, get rid of that. And now it just kind of looks a little bit crazy because the background is too blurred. I'm going to turn down the blur strength to 16 is fine. And then it's just like, it blurs out that snow in the side that I hate. So just like that is fine. So I'm going to export that, save a copy. And then for this one, I am going to go in to the QuickShot app that I told you about at the beginning. So this app is really cool, actually. I just found out about it not too long ago. I saw someone on Instagram use it. And it's just like, it's super fun. So if you hit this like looks button at the beginning, you can just see a bunch of filters. Now all of the ones with the little star in the corner of them are from the premium version, so there's not actually that many that are free. What I like about it is the sky part. So you can see the background of this photo. There's a sky, but it looks kind of drab and gross because it's gross out because it's winter. So you can hit all of these little sky buttons and it changes the look of the sky for you. It's so cute. So like obviously I wouldn't do one with like Santa in the background, haha. But you can do any of these ones and play around with it a little bit just to make it look more realistic. So for this one, kind of like this. And just keep it where it is there. And then the last thing I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go to Effects. And you can put like all these little like overlays on it. It's so cute. So I kind of like the look of the snow. I think it's super cute for winter. So I'm going to hit this little eraser tool in the corner and I'm going to erase over my body because I do not want any snow on me. Just like that. And of course I'm going to turn it down like so that you can barely see it, but I just like the little like wintry look it gives. So cute. So the only downside about this app is that it kind of ruins the quality of your photo. So I find I have to go to details and up the sharpness like a lot, up the structure a whole bunch, and up the depth a little bit. And then I'm just gonna save that. So the last photo that I'm going to edit is going to be my selfie. I go into Facetune first. So we're gonna go to Facetune. So we're going to open that photo in Facetune before you put any filters on it. I find it works a little bit better because then you can just fine tune the lighting of it afterwards, which is a bit better. So first I go to retouch and I use a whiten tool. Sometimes if my mouth is open I whiten my teeth, but this one my mouth is closed, so I'm going to whiten my eye area. Just like, especially sometimes the lighting of photos makes my eyes look really dark looking, so I turn up that a bit. So I do find for this one the white is just too like purple looking in the background, and I know that that's going to ruin the lighting of it afterwards when I export it into Lightroom. So I'm going to use the whiten tool and I'm going to whiten the background too. I do this sometimes instead of using the selective tool in Snapseed, just to save it, just to save a step if I'm not actually going to use Snapseed for anything. So I'm just gonna yeah, that looks fine. There we go. And then I'm gonna go to smooth. I don't put much smoothness on it, I promise. And then you can up the vibrance for anything. I'm gonna up the vibrance for the reds in my makeup. Just like that. Alright, that looks better already. So I do find that Facetune ruins the quality, so I'm going to scroll all the way over to edit, and then to sharpen, I'm going to up the sharpness again. That's fine. And then I'm going to export that, save, and then I'm going to go back to Lightroom. I'm going to open that photo, and this is my finished photo, and then I just copied the filters that I already used on the previous photo onto it, so I'm just going to paste those on. So you can see like that is fine. I don't like where I already put the sharpness on it. I'm finding it's looking a bit too sharp now. I'm going to turn down the sharpness. So these are just the same settings that I use for all of my winter photos again. I'm going to up the temperature a bit. I'm going to go and turn down the clarity because it's looking a bit too on the grainy side. I'm going to go to lighting. I'm going to turn down the exposure a little bit more. Turn down the highlights all the way. Turn down the shadows. And that looks fine. So just going to export that. So the final thing that I do, and obviously these photos I've already posted, so I'm not about to post any of them right now. But for this, I open the Unum app, and this is where I plan my feed. So I'll do a whole tutorial on this later on. So for this, as you can see, these are all photos that I've pasted in there before. But I just select a tile and hit the import button and just import any of the photos. So for this one, I'll just do this where it's already edited for winter, and then I can just see if the edits look good with all of my other photos. So for that one, yeah, I'm happy with that. It looks fine with all of the other ones. So if I were about to post that, then I would totally go ahead and do it. Alright, so that's it for my tutorial today. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I hope I didn't sound too awkward. So let me know if you'd like to see a part 2 of this. I'd love to share some tips and tricks on how I take my photos and how I plan my feed. So maybe I could do a part 2 and 3 of that. But I hope you enjoyed watching this today, and I hope that it helps you a little bit, or you can take something from it at least. And I'll see you next time. Thanks!